This is the kind of story that makes people sit up straight. For years, Nigerians have argued over what to call the men operating in the forest. Bandits, militants, herders, criminal gangs, aggrieved citizens. Every label has been used. Every debate has been exhausted. Meanwhile, the violence continued, the graves multiplied, and the arguments never stopped. Now something has happened that could end that debate once and for all. A new bill has landed in the United States Congress, and it is not just another diplomatic statement. It is not another press release filled with polite language. This is hard legislation. Real consequences. Real legal power. And if it passes, certain armed ethnic militias operating in Nigeria could be officially designated as a foreign terrorist organization, the same category the United States reserves for groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Let that sink in. Once a group receives that label, everything changes. It is no longer treated as a local conflict. It becomes international terrorism in the eyes of US law. Anyone who funds such a group can be prosecuted. Anyone who supplies weapons can face charges. Financial backers can have assets frozen. Leaders can be placed on global watch lists. Intelligence agencies can legally pursue them with far more aggressive tools. The rules of engagement shift overnight. The proposed law, titled the Nigeria Religious Freedom and Accountability Act of 2026, is being pushed by Republican lawmakers who say the United States can no longer ignore what they describe as sustained religious violence. They argue that too many lives have been lost and that soft diplomacy has not worked. According to the sponsors, this bill is about accountability. And this is where the situation becomes explosive. Some US lawmakers claim that tens of thousands of Christians have been killed between 2009 and 2025. Those figures are debated and controversial, but they have triggered outrage in Washington. Certain politicians are openly describing the violence as genocide. That word carries enormous weight internationally. It also creates pressure for action. If the bill passes, it would push the US Secretary of State to formally evaluate and potentially designate specific militias as terrorist organizations. That designation is not symbolic. It activates financial sanctions, travel bans, intelligence expansion, and global enforcement mechanisms. It could even affect individuals accused of shielding or supporting such groups if evidence meets legal standards. The bill also calls for a review of US financial assistance to Nigeria. Lawmakers are asking whether American taxpayer money might indirectly support institutions that fail to curb violence. Billions of dollars in aid could face scrutiny. That alone would shake diplomatic relations. But the story does not stop there. There is also a geopolitical angle. The legislation references concerns about illegal mining operations in parts of Nigeria rich in gold and lithium. Some US lawmakers believe that insecurity around these mining zones may be linked to foreign interest and illicit funding networks. If that is true, then this is not just about security. It is about global influence, economic competition, and strategic positioning in Africa. Nigeria sits at the center of that storm. If certain militias are labeled as terrorists, US intelligence resources could become heavily focused on tracking financiers, supply chains, and operational networks connected to them. That means internationalizing what has largely been treated as a domestic Nigerian crisis. It also raises questions about sovereignty. Should another country apply such a label to armed groups operating inside Nigeria? Or is international pressure necessary when violence continues unchecked? Opinions will be divided. Some Nigerians may welcome stronger action, believing that global pressure could finally force a decisive response. Others may see it as foreign overreach, an intrusion into national affairs. The tension between sovereignty and security will dominate the conversation. Another sensitive dimension is the long-standing debate between dialogue and force. Some religious and community leaders in Nigeria have argued that negotiation reduces bloodshed. They have met with armed groups and advocated amnesty or reintegration strategies. But if those groups receive a terrorist designation under US law, engagement becomes legally dangerous territory for anyone with ties to American systems. The space for dialogue could shrink dramatically. And that is where the stakes become personal for certain public figures who have publicly defended engagement as a solution. If the bill moves quickly through Congress, sanctions could follow. Travel restrictions could be imposed on individuals accused of aiding or shielding designated groups. Financial investigations could expand beyond Nigeria's borders. Diplomatic tensions could rise if Abuja resists the designation. On the other hand, if both governments align, it could lead to deeper security cooperation and intelligence sharing. Either way, 2026 could become a turning point. But strip away the politics for a moment. At the heart of this story are ordinary Nigerians. Farmers who want to return to their fields. Traders who want safe highways. Families who want to sleep without fear. Children who deserve schools instead of displacement camps. They are the ones living with the consequences of every decision made in Abuja and Washington. This bill represents more than foreign policy. It represents a potential shift in how the world defines Nigeria's security crisis. If the terrorist label is applied, the narrative changes globally. The financial networks behind violence come under international scrutiny. The diplomatic temperature rises. The clock starts ticking faster. The question now is simple but heavy: will this escalate the situation or finally force meaningful change? Because once a group is placed on the terrorist list, there is no middle ground. The language of negotiation fades. The language of enforcement takes over. And when global powers begin moving pieces on the board, smaller players feel the pressure first. What happens next will depend on political will, legal reviews, diplomatic calculations, and the complex realities on the ground. But one thing is certain: if this legislation advances, Nigeria's security conversation will no longer be confined within its borders. The world will be watching.